Sea turtles are really symbolic of what's happening to the ocean as a whole. As go sea turtles, so go, or will go, the ocean.
To know that the oceans are a place that is full of life is very important. I think it is true that all life is sacred, and I think it's also true that we all rely on other living things.
Sea turtles are ambassadors for the sea. Through them, we can really see their realm. They are creatures wedded to the part of the planet that is the cornerstone of life support for all of the planet.
When dinosaurs walked the earth, turtles plied the oceans. They are as old as history itself, and they have remained virtually unchanged throughout millennia. Through the era of volcanoes and earthquakes, past the coming of the Ice Age, and into modern human history, sea turtles have traversed the seas on an endless journey, a nomadic voyage through time. Less than a century ago, sea turtles abounded throughout the world's oceans in vast numbers. Today, all 7 species are in danger of disappearing forever. Yet, among all sea turtles, a single species stands alone, the leatherback, a symbol of all its kind, perched precariously on the road to oblivion, a road paved by human ignorance and apathy. It is the largest of all sea turtles, and less than 50 years ago was thriving in the world's oceans. Today, the leatherback is but a shadow of its former glory, and unless concern for its survival converts into action, these magnificent creatures will forever be lost. Like their cousins on land, sea turtles are cold-blooded reptiles. Yet, unlike their land cousins, sea turtle legs have evolved over millennia into long, graceful flippers that allow them to propel rapidly through the oceans. They can travel long distances in relatively short periods of time, rising to the surface occasionally only to replenish their lungs with oxygen. To protect them from predators, all but one species of sea turtle evolved a bony outer shell, the shape and color of which differ markedly among all species. This shell represents one of the most effective armaments of any vertebrate that has ever lived. But for the short sojourns by the females to nesting beaches for egg-laying, sea turtles spend their entire lives in the water, which accounts for how little we know of their lives and natural history. Only now, as they are fast disappearing, are we beginning to unravel their mysteries. The ancestors of sea turtles were inhabitants of the land. Then, over 150 million years ago, they returned to the sea. Today's sea turtles evolved from gigantic ancestors like Archelon. which plied the oceans during the Cretaceous period, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. They are the gentlest of creatures, ancient in geological and mythological terms as well, for they are revered in many indigenous cultures as a symbol of creation, longevity, and wisdom. They possess remarkable navigational skills, skills which remain a mystery to us. They engage in long migrations, thousands of miles, and yet are able to return at just the right time to the beach of their birth, where just offshore, the males and females mate to move their genetic code into the future. The pregnant females haul onto the beach to bury their eggs above the high tide line. And 6 to 12 weeks later, another generation of turtles makes its way to the open sea to engage in the long, desperate struggle for survival. A struggle most of the hatchlings will lose. Sea turtles have been called the ocean's canary in the coal mine, for they warn us of threats to the health of our oceans. As go sea turtles, so go our oceans. Unfortunately, populations of sea turtles are facing grave new threats to their continued existence. Threats that will drive many marine species to the brink of extinction. If we lose sea turtles, we will lose a magnificent part of our world. The hawksbill, named for its hawk-like beak, is best recognized by its beautiful shell. Unfortunately, this same shell has fueled an international demand for hawksbill tortoiseshell jewelry. The loggerhead, named for its large head, used to crush shellfish, undertakes one of the longest and most complex migration of all sea turtles, from Mexican waters to Japan. Among the 7 species, the green sea turtle is the one many of us are most familiar with. Named for its body fat, green from its predominant diet of algae, this turtle plies the seagrass beds, rocky shorelines, and coral reefs of tropical and subtropical waters. Once considered the most endangered of all sea turtles is the Kemp's Ridley. Their nesting beaches had remained a mystery until 1947, when a Mexican architect filmed over 40,000 females nesting on 2 proximate beaches in Mexico. The event, called an arrabada, can only be burned in our memory from this old footage, for nearly 60 years after it was shot, less than 4,000 returned to these beaches to breed. If the plight of all sea turtles could be epitomized by one species, it would be the leatherback. Among sea turtles, leatherbacks are the most unique. At up to 8 feet in length and weighing up to 2,000 pounds, they are Earth's largest living reptile, dwarfing all other sea turtles, and yet we know practically nothing of their natural history. Only now, with the advent of satellite tracking, are we getting a glimpse of their lives at sea, and it may not be at all as random as we once thought.
The leatherbacks really are amazing creatures. They're the largest sea turtles, the oldest in terms of their evolutionary history. They dive deeper and range over a larger part of the ocean than any other organism that we're aware of. They've really been successful for perhaps 100 million years, and in the past 50 to 100 have seen big threats to their extinction.
The leatherbacks, apart from the other sea turtles, have the potential for just capturing the imagination of people and to be, in a sense, that kind of creature with charisma and the power to focus attention on what's happening to the sea. For many years, they have been the most abundant sea turtle in the Pacific, but that has changed. It has changed dramatically just in the past 25 years, and especially the last 10 years. They're being captured in unprecedented numbers. Our fishing is what represents the greatest threat to their future.
Pacific leatherbacks nest in 4 major locations in the whole Pacific Basin, and at all of those locations save one, the populations have been declining extremely rapidly, particularly over the last 10 years or so. The Malaysian population is basically gone, and the Mexican and Costa Rican populations have been declining at 20% a year for the past 5 years. So we have real concerns about just the numbers of leatherbacks that are out there.
While leatherback populations continue to decline, researchers are redoubling their efforts to save them. First, by identifying all of the causes, then developing realistic programs to reverse the damage. This strategy is based on past sea turtle problems and the efforts put forward to resolve them.
There is already a model that has worked for the Kemp's Ridley, which was the most endangered sea turtle.
Gulfport shrimpers utilize huge trawl nets to scoop in vast quantities of shrimp. Nets that are deployed from the rear of the vessel and dragged underwater for hours. Each year, thousands of tons of bycatch are brought on board and discarded. And in the past, this included sea turtles, including the highly endangered Kemp's Ridley. Once a turtle became trapped in the net, its fate was all but sealed. Yet a simple device developed by fishermen and researchers all but resolved the issue. Turtle excluder devices, now required by law, are attached near the end of the net. As the trapped turtle heads for the pocket, it bounces off an iron grate, pinballing it down through an escape hatch and back to open sea, saving both time and money for the fishermen and the lives of thousands of sea turtles.
The turtle excluder device law reduced the interaction and accidental bycatch of the Kemp's Ridley by the shrimping industry, which was the major impact upon the adult population. The shrimp are caught at the same level that they would be caught if there was not a grid there.
The leatherback situation is quite different indeed. And yet, if it is to be resolved, it must utilize a cooperative effort, not only from fishermen and researchers, but from a concerned public as well. Considering the depleted state of the leatherback populations, efforts to save them must be comprehensive and multifaceted, and must begin even before the turtles are born. Along the unprotected beaches where leatherback females lay and bury their eggs, human communities often contribute to the problem.
At the interface, the land-sea interface, where the beaches, where the leatherbacks come like other sea turtles to deposit their eggs, well, there is a problem because their eggs taste good to human beings. They have been a treat and have been taken, I suppose, for as long as people have found turtle eggs, they have consumed them. But at this point, every egg that is taken tips the scales inexorably toward the demise of these creatures that have such a long and distinguished history.
Eggs that are left to hatch spring from the sand a new generation of leatherbacks, which scamper to the ocean home they will know for the rest of their lives. Challenged by natural predators, only 1 in 1,000 will survive to adulthood. The dramatic decline in leatherbacks over the past decade seems to correlate with an industrial fishing technology that can now be found in practically every ocean on Earth.
The swordfish longline hooks and the lines that the leatherbacks tend to get tangled in, even more than getting hooked on, that are used to catch swordfish off California, off South America. There are many of them in the water, and they do catch substantial numbers of leatherbacks.
Until 1991, the leatherback's worst enemy was the open ocean drift net fishery. Thousands of vessels, large and small, plied the Pacific Ocean, laying out daily hundreds of thousands of miles of invisible monofilament net. Drift netting was widely considered the most effective method of catching its target species of tuna, swordfish, salmon, and squid. It was also considered the most environmentally destructive method of fishing ever devised, for it caught and killed everything that swam into its clutches. Every year, millions of tons of bycatch were thrown back to sea, including thousands of dolphins and whales, hundreds of thousands of seabirds, and an untold number of turtles, including leatherbacks. The devastating impact drift netting was having on the marine life of the Pacific resulted in a United Nations ban in 1991, and it wasn't long before these vessels converted to longlining. The ban on open ocean drift netting only temporarily halted the carnage. As the drift net vessels converted to longlining, the philosophy remained the same. Take as much from the ocean as fast as you can, with little or no regard for the collateral damage. Tuna, sharks, billfish, everything was killed. And longlining could be used on huge deep-sea ships that remain at sea for months at a time, or small coastal vessels that fish closer to home. The longline method of fishing utilizes a single line, often up to 60 miles in length, buoyed at the surface with thousands of baited hooks extending down a nylon monofilament line. The line is left in the water overnight, and in the morning is retrieved and the catch landed. The baited hooks aren't discriminating, taking anything that bites the bait or gets snagged by the sharp hooks, including an occasional rhesus dolphin, as well as hundreds of unsuspecting sea lions. This one was lucky. He came up alive, and because the video camera was rolling, the crew removed the hook and released him alive. The bycatch includes many species of non-target fish, millions of sharks and seabirds, and tens of thousands of marine mammals and sea turtles, including leatherbacks.
The leatherbacks are being caught on the long lines. We have some video footage of one longline trip in 1997 that caught 2 juvenile leatherbacks on a longline west of the Galapagos Islands. Fishing fleets are coming all the way from Spain, from Norway. They're moving into the Eastern Pacific. We already have thousands of boats from Japan, from Taiwan, from Indonesia, setting these long lines that can be 80, 90 miles long. Each one deploys 5,000 to 8,000 hooks at a time. We know it's definitely adult mortality, and we know that longlining started in the early 90s, and we know it's grown exponentially. That's the problem.
The devastating impact of longlining on the marine ecosystem is evidenced by the data collected from researchers at sea. Scientists now estimate that every year, pelagic longlining in the Pacific alone takes 3.7 million sharks, over 400,000 marlin, as many as 40,000 sea turtles, up to 14,000 black-footed albatross, and at least 2,000 dolphins and 1,500 whales. So alarming are these preliminary figures that 500 of the world's most renowned scientists and over 100 environmental organizations from around the globe are pressing the United Nations for a complete moratorium on high seas longlining in the Pacific until the fishery can be conducted in ways that do not threaten marine species with extinction.
Whenever you order seafood, you are commissioning somebody to go fishing and to catch animals out of the ocean. If you order swordfish or if you order shark steaks, it's quite likely that those same boats that you are giving your business to ultimately have also been catching sea turtles.
Leatherback problems are not by any means limited to longline fishing or the stealing of their eggs. Even though open ocean drift netting was banned over a decade ago, coastal gill netting takes place all over the globe. And with leatherback populations at a fraction of their original numbers, today every animal is critical in the effort to elevate their populations. On April 4, 2000, a leatherback was found stranded on South Padre Island near Harlingen, Texas. Wrapped in a gill net from head to tail, she was exhausted and dehydrated. Brought to the Coastal Studies Lab, she was rehydrated, warmed overnight, and successfully released the next day. Coastal gill nets do in fact pose huge problems for leatherback turtles. Throughout the entire Pacific Basin, leatherbacks run a gauntlet of longline hooks and coastal gill nets. Female carcasses often strewn the beaches where they come to nest. Sad testament to the impact local gill netting continues to have on these vulnerable animals. Critical Western Pacific leatherback nesting beaches are found in Malaysia, Irian Jaya, and New Guinea, while those in the Eastern Pacific stretch from Mexico and Costa Rica. Experts are now drawing a correlation to all South Pacific beaches and an island group extending from Central America to Peru, and are pushing for marine protected areas in the waters between these locations. Besides the gauntlet of hooks, nets, egg poachers, and natural predators faced by leatherbacks, even another problem lies on the horizon. One that affects not only leatherbacks, but all of the ocean's creatures. Decades of pollution have resulted in the systemic poisoning of all that call the ocean their home, especially those at the top of the food chain. Food fish taken from the ocean is so infused with chemical pollutants that warning signs like these are appearing in fish markets throughout the U.S. and abroad. In fact, the very same swordfish, tuna, and sharks caught by longlines that kill leatherback turtles are so contaminated with toxic mercury that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and the Environmental Protection Agency have warned women of childbearing age and young children from consuming these fish. The irony here is that the very fish we extract from the ocean for food are nearly unfit for human consumption.
I think the leatherback sea turtle can be saved by buying up the beaches, preventing development from indiscriminately destroying the beaches that these turtles need to reproduce, and by developing treaties and techniques that will reduce the interference that they have with the longline fisheries, especially the swordfish and billfish industry that are devastating the populations of adults right now in the Pacific.
If we succeed in our time in protecting these creatures with a long and distinguished history, the sea turtles, whose history goes back some 400 million years but is right on the line today, their survival really depends on actions we take or don't take. If we so manage the planet that their future at least has a chance, we're doing the same thing for ourselves.